People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
When a bad cop.
It's the blacks and the immigrants. That's who did this.
You're not racist, are you, Gerhard?
Why can't anybody say bad things about black people without being called a racist?
Meets an even badder FBI agent.
Now I know you're tripping. No doubt mind.
The United States military. A stone-cold corpse.
We'll need to place him under arrest.
And a KKK plot to destroy the country.
The SSJ-6.
The Ku Klux Klan has developed a way to shrink themselves down in order to enter a black man's dead body and save a racist cop.
You've got three things. Dead, white, and blue. Created entirely out of stock and public domain film footage. Dead, White, and Blue is a green movie made of 100% recycled material.
Word.
The afterbirth of a nation.
You alive?
Dead, White, and Blue. A Stag Films production.
Ain't nothing but a thing.
Hey folks, welcome to a special episode of The Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. On this episode, I am talking with writer-director Mike Davis. Mr. Davis has given us a few films already. This is his latest one. We're talking about Dead, White, and Blue from 2025. It is available on a lot of different services. Check out your Tubi, your Fossum, whatever. It looks like it says Favawesome, but I don't know how you pronounce that channel. It's got a weird freaking logo. Anyway, it's a kind of a weird movie, which is great. It is a 100% green movie. It's made with recycled footage from stock footage, public domain files. It's about a rogue FBI agent who tries to defeat the KKK. It is a lot of fun. It is what I would consider a detorned film. If you've listened to our episode about Can Dialectics Break Bricks, you'll hear a lot more about that. Détournement, however you want to say it. I'm not French. It is basically taking something and twisting it for your own needs. In this case, it is taking stock footage and public domain footage and telling a whole brand new story out of it. I wrote a lot about that in my book about bad movies with the LA Connection. Really enjoyed torn films. Really had a great time with this one. Very funny stuff, just kind of psychotronic. I was really happy with Dead, White, and Blue. Definitely check it out, and I hope you enjoy this interview. Mr. Davis, thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate this.
It's an honor to be speaking with you.
I want to know a little bit more about your story. How did you get into filmmaking?
It's something that I have been interested in for a long time. I went to school for it. I was working hard to get into the film industry for many years. And finally, at a certain point, I just decided the only way I'm going to make this happen is to go off on my own. And so after years of writing screenplays and trying to get stuff off the ground and trying to deal with Hollywood, because eventually I ended up in Los Angeles, I looked to my heroes, who are the independent exploitation greats, the Mount Rushmore, the Ed Woods, the Herschel Gordon Lewises, the Roger Cormans, and just took my cue from them and just decided to really go for it on my own and start making my own films.
I seem to remember one of your early films was Pervert, which definitely paid a lot of homage to those filmmakers you're talking about.
Yes, I'm glad you know of Pervert. It is a Ruth Meyer homage. He was definitely one of my big influences early on. Great sexploitation filmmaker, amazing editor, worked with fantastic writers. I love his movies, the entire catalog from the early ones to the later ones. And so Pervert was my first foray into true exploitation style filmmaking It's an homage to Russ Meyer and his films. He's an early influence. I love everything he's ever done. Me and along with director Jonathan Udis made this homage to Russ Meyer movies and kind of Herschel Gordon Lewis style horror. And it was successful on the kind of festival and indie circuit. And that was supposed to be our entree into making more and more of those kind of movies. Unfortunately, we learned the hard way that even at that level, it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of backing to make a film. So it started me on my journey to figure out how can I make a really great movie that has all the elements that I love for no money or very little money. And that's when I started working with stock footage and old footage and public domain stuff. And that got me started on that path.
I see your credits on IMDb and it's like stock footage supervisor, stock footage this, stock footage that, stock footage researcher. I'm just like, my God, you like live and die by stock footage. Tell me more about that.
Most people hate stock footage. Directors hate it. It's got a really bad rap. Most people think of it as like the thing that you stick into a movie when you can't afford to shoot it. And so the movie will be going along nicely. And then suddenly there's this shot that looks totally different from like 10 years ago of a crowd or something. And then we cut back. And I like that. I enjoy that aesthetic. But there is an art to it. You know, you can really accentuate movies with the right kind of stock if you know how to use it. And I had been collecting, you know, the stuff I love, just the way it looks, is from the 50s and 60s and 70s. So I had a whole kind of library full of that stuff. And I started out when people needed footage like that, they would come to me and I would help them find places for it in their movies, and learned a lot about copyright and licensing. And at some point, I kind of thought, like, what if I could make a whole feature out of this stuff? And most of these stock footage films are just a couple of minutes long. So I kind of started playing around with collaging them together and Frankensteining bits and pieces. And eventually I figured, let me see if I could do this. There's been other experiments, other examples. Woody Allen did What's Up, Tiger Lily, where he redubbed an old Japanese gangster movie. And I found a public domain feature, an old sci-fi movie called, it was a Russian thing called Planeta Burr. You probably heard of it, also known as Voyage to the Planet of the Prehistoric Women. I started kind of cannibalizing the footage from that movie and adding in a bunch of other stuff from educational films and old ads and industrial films and government stuff, and made a movie called Sex Galaxy, which was sort of a 50s sci-fi parody, all redubbed with new dialogue and re-edited with a new story. And people liked it and I liked it. I had a great time making it. And I just thought, hey, how many more of these can I get away with? So now I've made 3 total.
Tell me a little bit more about President Wolfman, your feature from 2012.
Sex Galaxy was sort of a 50s sci-fi parody. President Wolfman is more of a 70s horror, political satire, made mostly with footage from the film The Werewolf of Washington, which is a 1973 terrible movie. No offense to the makers. I owe them a debt of gratitude, but the original movie fell into the public domain, which means that nobody really owns it. There's no copyright, and you can take that footage and repurpose it and do with it what you want. Even though that movie's not great, it's got amazing footage in it of a guy, a politician, or he works at the White House and he gets bit, he turns into a werewolf. Again, I repurposed it, recreated a new story, threw in tons of other stuff, and came up with this idea about the president being bitten by a werewolf and having to navigate running the country while also dealing with turning into a werewolf and wanting to kill off all of his political opponents. And of course, this was before everything that's going on now. I dare say reality is even crazier than that story. But again, it was, it was successful on the circuit and people appreciated what I was doing. And I kind of took a break after that to focus on getting jobs. I worked on a lot of kind of Hollywood features and commercials and music videos, stuff like that. So I had to focus on that for a while. And all along, I kept thinking, I really want to do another one of these again. And as a reaction to sort of the crazy political world situation that's been going on in the last 5 years or so, 10 years, I was inspired to make this new film, which is Dead, White, and Blue.
Does the footage come first? Does the ideas come first and you try to match it up? Like, where are you sourcing this stuff? I'm so curious how you made this happen.
It's literally backwards. It's take anything you know about traditional filmmaking and just do it in reverse. And that's the process. I start with the finished footage. I can't really come up with anything, do anything, have any ideas until I see something that works that I want to use. And by the way, I don't even listen. Usually the first thing I do is erase the dialogue because I don't want to be influenced by anything that's supposed to be happening. I just take the images and I think, okay, that's really weird. That's funny. That's interesting footage. I like the way it looks. What can I do with this? How can I make a story out of this? With President Wolfman, like I mentioned, it was easy because I already had this feature hang other ideas off of with somewhat of a structure with consistent characters. For Dead, White, and Blue, I decided to really challenge myself and not use a pre-existing public domain feature. I just used a lot of various clips, over 300 of source films I used. So once I have that kind of skeleton of a story in place, I collect all my footage. I keep track of what's what. Okay, in this shot, there's a guy blowing up a car. I'm going to need that. So I keep very detailed track of everything, make a rough cut, which kind of tells the story, except with no dialogue. It's almost like a silent film, a silent version of the story. And once I know the story is working, then I can start working on the actual script and writing dialogue, trying to give it some structure and beginning, middle, and end, and work with, the jokes and trying to make it funny. And inevitably, as I'm working on that process, I think of other ideas. I grab more footage. I throw more things into the mix. Once the script is tight and solid, then it's the process of recording the voices. And I make sort of a dialogue-only version of the film. And then I take the dialogue-only version of the film, lay it on top of the silent visual version of the film, and then edit. Try to squeeze it all together and make it work. So I've just given away all my secrets. But you know what? One of the reasons I started doing this is because I really want other people to try this. It's fun, but it's also because filmmaking, if you do it the right way with a crew and all that stuff, it is just, it's really not tenable for a lot of people. A lot of people just don't have the resources, a lot of talented people. I want to pay my debt back and hopefully inspire other filmmakers to try to do stuff like this too, because it does add to the lexicon of sort of the great indie filmmakers, like I mentioned, Roger Corman and those guys who were always trying to figure out new ways to do things on the cheap. And a lot of great innovation and a lot of fun movies came out of that spirit. And so that's really what I'm trying to pass on.
Obviously, I know that stock footage is your stock in trade, pun intended, but where did you see the footage and say, oh yeah, I got to use that? Like, here's this blaxploitation film or this science film or this thing. Because you used, how many, you said like, how many films? Like 300? You did, Jesus, that's wild. How do you even keep track of that stuff, or like that it flags you and you go, oh yeah, I got to use that?
I guess one thing I skipped in the beginning was that searching through thousands and thousands of hours of footage is really the first step. So I looked through a lot of stuff. I mentioned, there are movies that are in the public domain. Most famously, Night of the Living Dead was never properly copyrighted or fell out of copyright. I forget what happened. But the original George Romero's 1968 film is public domain, which means that you could take Night of the Living Dead, you could re-edit it into a new movie, you could redub the dialogue, you could basically do anything you want with it. You own it, I own it, the world owns it. The only other way that things become public domain besides just aging out, which is like, I think anything created before 1930 at this point, I think is public domain. But the other thing that's public domain is anything that's been created by the United States government is automatically public domain. So the United States government has a film division. They made a lot of movies and still do. Anything from like how to work this missile system to, hey, if you're a Marine, don't take LSD. And a lot of these movies have great footage, FBI training films, public service announcements. There's a lot of government produced stuff that is pretty out there, pretty amazing. And I spent many, many, many hours just digging through as much of that stuff as I could find. It's available through Library of Congress, through the Smithsonian, and it's great stuff. And it's all of ours. It's part of the First Amendment, basically. It's our patriotic duty to take this stuff and use it, especially if you're going to use it to criticize the government that gave it to you. That's something that I take special pride in and see as a responsibility.
So where do you know your actors from? How did you gather these folks to do all these voices?
I've been working with a lot of the same people since Sex Galaxy, living in Los Angeles. There's so many talented people. I mean, basically anyone you pass on the street, even if they work in the coffee shop, is also a voice actor, or something else. And so it's one of the reasons I like being here. And just over the years, I worked with people who I develop a relationship with and just end up using them over and over again. One of the tricks is a lot of these people, the ones who are really talented, can do like 10, 15 voices each that sound nothing alike. And so with not too many actors, you can cover a lot of characters. And, one of the things I like to do is have as many characters as possible, because again, I'm really trying to get production value. So if I wrote a script with a cast of hundreds, that's never something I could produce on my own if I was, doing it in a traditional way. But with this footage, I could do whatever I want. So lots of characters, lots of explosions, war scenes, and animals and kids and all the stuff they tell you you're not supposed to write into your script. I have license to do it.
This process is so fascinating for me. The way that you string the footage together, you come up with a story, you get the audio version going, and then you say, like, you lay the audio over the video. How many adjustments do you have to make once you start putting these two things together and marrying these elements?
It's a lot. Probably worked on this last film on and off for a couple of years, mostly because I just didn't really have a deadline. And I thought the previous films I purposely did very quickly because, again, in the spirit of Roger Corman, who famously shot an entire feature in 2 days, I think, in the 50s, I felt like I wanted to create this sort of assembly line factory kind of process where I could just spit these things out. But for this one, I took my time. And so I did a lot of adjusting and finagling and, even if I found something after it was all done, if I found some little bit of footage like, oh man, I wish I had used that, I just decided, let me throw it in and see what happens. So yeah, the editing process is important. The advantage is that because you don't, when you shoot a regular film, you'll do like 3 different angles of every scene. And then you have to choose between this angle and that angle. And it's like, it's a lot of work. With this, you only pretty much have one option. I mean, there's one character in the film who's like the star. And I probably had about 2 minutes of footage. And I just had to make that 2 minutes work over and over and over again so that you didn't realize you were watching the same shots over and over again. That's one of the things you kind of have to do is just learn to stretch things out and make do with what you have. So that's the challenge. But because the stuff is limited, it makes you just have to think creatively and edit creatively. You don't have so many options that you get kind of overwhelmed by it.
I mean, it's just amazing. The final product is just remarkable. I was having so much fun with it. And it really scratches an itch for me because you mentioned What's Up, Tiger Lily and the Russian film. I mean, yeah, I'm a big fan of these kind of detoured films like Can Dialectics Break Bricks or the old LA Connection show, Mad Movies. So it's just like this really plays so well into that. And I love that it's modern day. It's not something from the 60s, 70s, 80s. Here it is, 2025. And just the satire and the addressing of what's going on in the world is great to have. And it just feels so present, even though it's all old footage.
I thought a lot about that. I think there's something about the footage from that era that, of course, if you're a certain age, it's nostalgic, but it's also it just lends to a lot of different kinds of things. You can see it now and modernize it. Black Dynamite is a good example. Not that they used old footage, but just that genre, that era, with everything happening now with race relations, etc. Blaxploitation seemed like a really good vehicle to satirize and get the points across that I wanted to make. So yeah, I didn't use any actual clips from blaxploitation films, but hey, a lot of that Army Department of Defense stuff in the 70s looks pretty blaxploitation-y.
That must have been what I was picking up on, like those guys all around the table kind of thing. Yeah, it totally did remind me of Black Dynamite.
I don't know if that footage is just kind of because it's sort of grainy and faded and it's dreamy in a certain way. I feel like it evokes more emotion than, something that's shot now that looks perfect, or a lot of people are making AI stuff. And I just don't know that they're ever going to be able to really recreate the weird vibe that exists in that grainy footage from that time. Same with kind of the Super 8 home movie stuff. It's just, there's something very soulful about it. I don't like to get into the whole analog thing. Maybe that has something to do with it, but I think there was just some crazy technology morphing going on back then that really made that stuff special. So I love working with it.
I always ask filmmakers what were their biggest challenges, but it feels like this whole movie, just from start to finish, is a challenge, just problem solving.
Yeah, I have a strange brain. I don't think I have a photographic memory, but if I see something, I'll remember it. Where was that shot of, the cat, jumping on a windowsill? Oh, that was from that 1971 documentary about the decay of Chicago. All right, let me find it in there and I'll put it in. Yeah, you have to be a little bit insane and a little crazy. So honestly, it isn't really challenging for me. I thought it was easy because to me, what's challenging is being on a film set with 100 people running around and screaming and everybody needing something different and tugging you one way or the other and having to make all these decisions. That's challenging to me, and dealing with raising money and everything. So to me, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's the path of least resistance for me, certainly in terms of really just being able to get a feature film done and getting it out there.
I know you've got help when it comes to the folks that are providing their voices and their talent that way. Otherwise, is it just a one-man band otherwise?
Pretty much. I did have my son do a lot of the editing. He's good with After Effects and some of the more technical stuff. He's a teenager. It was great. I was able to tell him what to do and he had to do it. But no, it was actually a lot of fun working with him. And in the past, I've worked with producers and other people, but this one was really a labor of love. And I knew the only way I was going to be able to really do it the way I wanted to was to just do it by myself and not bugging about helping me. It's a lot of it. And I do actually do a lot of the voices too. So it is, I guess you could say, a tour de force.
You mentioned the whole idea of like, oh, I found this extra bit. I need to throw this in here. But when do you say to yourself, okay, this is done. I'm complete with this?
For this one, it was a good experience because I thought I was finished. And my strategy was to enter it into a lot of film festivals and sort of get the word out about the movie in that way. And that enabled me to go to these festivals and watch the film with an audience on the screen. And that's really the only way to know when something is really working or when it isn't. Even if it's just some little sound thing or something, you just sitting at home by yourself in front of the computer, you really can't do that. That allowed me to go back and make a lot of adjustments after each time I saw it with an audience. And yeah, I could have kept going, definitely. And probably every director, I think, feels that way. You know, at a certain point when I just felt like all the things that were really bugging me, I fixed. That's when I was like, all right, let me just put this out here before something so crazy in the world happens that it's going to make this thing dated, which sadly it isn't. I don't think it is dated yet. I created this film around the time, I did the bulk of the work around the time of the last election. And I actually made it as a cautionary tale. Like, hey guys, you know, we kind of like got through it the first time, but let's not let it happen again. And it did. And I even considered just not even finishing the film because I was like, but I felt like, hey, you know what? This is going to be my part in the resistance. Is going to be just my take on what's happening. And I think I actually found it to be very cathartic to finish it and to express those things and then to see other people also, you know, it could be kind of some of the stuff in the movie is kind of over the edge and, you know, a little bit shocking, but hopefully in a good way where it is a cathartic experience for people who are watching it. And also just laughing, of course, is always cathartic. So ideally, people will be laughing too. The other option is and we did do this on Pervert, you know, rent out a theater space and do test screenings and all that stuff. But, you know, between you and me, the budget for this film literally was zero. And so part of that was just because I couldn't afford to spend money on it. But part of it too was also just as an experiment. Like, can I do this? Can I make this feature for nothing? And if I had set up screenings and booked out theaters, like that would have blown my budget. So again, and you do have to pay to enter into festivals. There's a nominal fee, but I figured that was okay. That was still less than renting out a theater.
Once you go through this whole screening process and through the festival circuit, what happens to the film then?
I mean, the next step is distribution. You want to get the movie out there. This is not the kind of movie going to play in theaters. I never considered a theatrical run. In the old days, it would have been straight to DVD, but that doesn't exist either, basically. So streaming is really the thing. And I wanted to work with my distributor of my other films, and he thankfully liked the movie and accepted it. And they're a small company, but they're getting it out there. It's on Tubi. It's on Fossum. It's going to be on some other streaming sites. So it's out in the world and people can see it. And at this point, I'm letting go of the baby.
Your other films like President Wolfman, Sex Galaxy, Pervert, are those all available on those same platforms?
President Wolfman and Sex Galaxy are. Pervert is currently not available. I am in discussions with the director to put it out. You know, that movie I don't know whether it was maybe ahead of its time, but a lot of people had negative reactions to that film. And my partner got a little gun shy. And once we got kind of older, I think he wasn't that thrilled about being attached to it. So I'm working on it. I'm working on him. I'm saying, hey, it's time. Let's get it back out there. So hopefully in the near future, that will be available to see somewhere.
Yeah, good thing I still have my DVD copy of it.
Yes, hold on to it. It's going to be worth money.
Obviously, you still have the day job. Like, it's amazing to see, like, oh yeah, his latest work, A War Machine, that just came out on, Netflix last week or something, or some of these other titles where it's just like, oh yeah, no, your name's associated with all these movies. This is amazing. But how many projects are you working on at the same time? Like, are you working on another, I love that you call these green movies, like a completely recycled film. Are you working on another recycled movie at the moment?
Yes, I am. I have a new one in the works, and it is very different from the last one. This one is kind of just a fun, brainless, drug smuggling Hawaii adventure. And it's called Hot Heat Hawaii. And it's more of a 90s kind of Baywatchy, cheesy action movie. Hard Ticket to Hawaii, something like that.
I was going to say, it sounds like a Sedaris film. Yeah.
Oh, that one should be fun. I am determined to not put as much work into that one, but maybe I will. I don't know. We'll see. But so far, I'm having a good time with it.
Is the best place for people to keep up with you stag-films.com?
Yes. Stag Films is my company. We produce all of these wonderful films. So check out Stag Films. Also on Instagram, check out Stag Films, and also Dead, White, and Blue. That's probably where I'm the most active currently.
I really look forward to the next one. I hope that people listening to this will definitely check out your works, especially Dead, White, and Blue. It is so much fun. And thank you so much for thinking of me and reaching out to me, because this was a great, great film for me to check out. And I really do appreciate your work and your efforts.
Thank you so much, Mike. I've been following you for a long time, back in the cashier days. And, I just thought you were the right man to come to with this. And I'm really happy that you responded to it and that you had a good time with the movie.